Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm glad you're listening today. Thank you so much for being here. Kyle, thank you also for being here today. How's it going, man?
Yeah, man. Wouldn't miss it.
All right.
It's going pretty good.
Hey, this is our last episode of 2024, and it's been a wild ride. Of course, many listeners know we took a little bit of a step back for season 12, and we're looking forward to picking up full speed ahead season 13 in February. So we got a couple months of nothing, at least not producing. You and I will still meet and interview people and get things ready for season 13. But we hope that listeners are looking forward to the holiday season and bringing 2024 to an end. Kyle, what's on the radar for today?
Previously, I told you about my new van and how when I set the cruise control, it keeps distance. It's got all these new features, right, that I've never had before. So when I set the cruise control on the highway, even if I have it set at 75 miles per hour, if the car in front of me is going 65, it still keeps distance. I don't have to do anything to the gas or the brake or anything.
Right.
Okay, so recently I discovered the lane assist button, and it was really amazing. Because I push this button and it steers for me.
Yeah.
I think you have a similar thing in your car.
Yeah.
So I was driving back from Philadelphia the other day, and I was in traffic, stop and go. You're either on the gas or on the brake the whole time. So I decided I would test out how this behaves in this situation. So I set the cruise control, I put it on 65 miles an hour, but we're going stop and go.
Sure.
And then I pushed the lane assist button. I think that's what it's called, lane assist.
Sure.
And it started steering for me. I didn't touch the wheel or the gas or brake for 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know, that's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
I had my hands hovering over the wheel and on the gas and brake, but it did all the work for me, and it actually took a lot of the stress out of that drive. Partly because I was enjoying how amazing it was and just learning about it. But also, I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to get too close to the car in front of me or anything like that.
So, if it's stop and go traffic, did it come to a complete stop for you, or never got that far?
My van came to a complete stop a couple times.
Wow.
So it went the whole, and up to, 50, 60 miles an hour or whatever. So
I can't say that I've ever put my Subaru to the test with that technology. But I've never thought that it would do all that for me. At some point I do use the cruise and let it control speed based on the car in front of me. But if I'm ever in bumper to bumper or stop and go traffic, I just take over. But there are times where I'd rather play on my phone than take over. so maybe there's a whole nother world that I haven't experienced yet with my Subaru.
Wait, I think you're supposed to still pay attention, even if the car is driving.
Yeah, I imagine. I wonder how many people are listening to this right now and think to themselves, duh, I've been doing that for 10 years.
Yeah, that's
or however long.
totally. That's funny. Yeah.
Like, did your last van have working blinkers, or did you have to stick your arm out the window?
Hand signals. No, there was a hole in the ground, and I actually powered
your
it
feet
like
down.
Fred
Yeah.
Flintstone.
All right, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm still excited that you're enjoying your new van. So, congratulations.
Thank you. All right, Sean. So I had this thought the other day that my perception
Did it hurt? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
So my thought, though, my perception of my disability is a lot different than it was when I was first diagnosed 25 years ago.
Mm.
And, I mean, that's easy to understand, right? Because just lots of things change. We get older, we meet other people, and just stuff happens, and we understand ourselves a little more,
Sure.
I think. And so today I wanted to talk about how and why we perceive ourselves and our disabilities a little bit differently, or maybe a lot differently than when we were first diagnosed.
Sure.
So an example from even before I was diagnosed, I would see somebody before I even knew I had FA, right? I would see somebody with a disability and be like, oh man, that stinks. That their life must suck.
Mm.
And I think we're fed that by society, right? And it's hard to not be in that train of thought. And then obviously my perception has changed because I have a disability.
Sure.
I'm experiencing it. I love my life, and I love the person I've become. I love my friends with disabilities, and so obviously I see it a lot differently now. And so for me, that's one example of how I've changed my perception of disability over time.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm gonna track with you as best I can, just for listeners' sake.
Yeah.
I haven't put a lot of mental energy into the idea, so some of my responses are just gut reactions, right? But for me, I wonder if there's a way to explain my perspective. I feel like it might be a little bit different, right? Because I'm with you. A long time ago, you would see somebody and think, oh man, poor them. Obviously now, I still have that thought where, I'm a little empathetic, or my heart breaks if their condition or circumstances appear to be worse than mine, right? They may not be,
there
but
is some
it
nuance
seems
to it.
that way.
Right, yeah.
But I also feel like for me personally, I'm with you. I feel like I've built a life and live a life that I enjoy and I love, and I tell people all the time, don't feel bad for me, life is good.
Right. Yeah.
But there's still probably every day or pretty regularly moments where a symptom or a piece of my progression is a little more advanced and it drives me mad or frustrating or, I catch myself telling, in my head, I hear stupid disease, stupid FA, or it's so annoying, or little things like that. So I would imagine you have the same experiences. I wonder how that compares to the perception and how that overall changes over years.
Yeah. I think that's true. Like there's a difference between, call it my average perception, my 30,000 foot view perception, and then like an acute moment where I'm like, you know what? I need to start using a wheelchair. That, that's an example of a time when FA reaches out and slaps you.
Sure.
It's like, look, like this is not good, and I'm going to take you down. So I think there are moments, and even now, right, when you realize maybe like all your friends are like, whatever. I really wish I could go for a jog with a friend. Or like, stuff like that. Now, obviously, like, I think I've replaced some of that stuff with other things that do fit with my disability and my way of life. But there are times where you're thinking, I wish my situation was different.
Sure.
I also, at the same time, I think that everyone, no matter who they are, whether it's disability or social status, economics, whatever, you have that grass is greener on the other side, no matter what the situation is.
Sure.
So,
you mentioned something that's got me thinking. You talk about wishing you could jog with some friends, right? And I feel like I've had the same thoughts recently with one of my best friends. We used to hang out all the time, but we don't get to hang out as much. I think that's because life unfolds, right? He's married, they have little kids, and he works a lot, so there's very limited free time outside of the babies and the family life and the work. But I noticed that pretty regularly, he's kind of got a new group of friends and they golf like once a month. And part of me, I see myself thinking, oh, it'd be fun to hang out with them, but I don't golf. And I'm not interested.
Totally.
I don't wish I could golf, right? I couldn't stand there and enjoy the game with my disability or the hardships in walking. And I don't want to. Like, golf is not my thing. So I wonder if we look at me, wanting to hang out with my golfing buddies, or you wanted to hang out with your jogging buddies, could the question be posed that we want to hang out with the wrong friends? But then the flip side of that is, okay, so you're telling me I need to hang out with the only people that can do what I do?
Well, really, I think the question to me is not whether or not I hang out with those people, but the hard thing, I think, is that option is not there at all.
Doesn't exist.
It's not even a thing to you couldn't choose to do that.
Sure.
I think that's a hard thing.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a difficulty. And I feel like a hot mess on this, right? I'm all over the place. But yeah, these are certainly questions you wrestle with, right? Especially that one I threw out there, like, do I need to rethink who I'm friends with? I think ultimately the answer is no. I believe that. But it certainly causes you to wonder how much of your friendships change because of your lack of ability to hang with them.
Yeah, and I guess my purpose for this conversation was not so much prescriptive, not
Sure.
like how should I change my life because of my disability, but looking back on the last 25 years, how has my life changed because of my disability?
Yeah.
So,
are there? Do you have any specifics, like, were you milestones that you can call out or point to?
Yeah, well, diagnosis is probably an easy one to look at because all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my gosh, my life is ruined. I'm going to die tomorrow. I mean, that's where your mind goes, right?
Yeah.
Life is over. And obviously looking back on it, that is certainly not the truth.
Sure.
But it's just something that you learn over time. No, there's still a ton I can do, and I can build a beautiful life, even though it felt like back then, it felt like my future was not looking good at all.
Sure. Yep, agreed with that. Especially diagnosis, right? It's a whole nother ball game
Yeah.
when you're first faced with the reality of a diagnosis. But what's testament to, human desire to be successful or achieve or win at life is this, I think, an innate desire to figure it out. So I'm with you. I mean, that perspective has changed immensely for me, because at first you think, I will never be able to walk again. And I don't know how long it's been, 07 to, almost 20 years. I'm still walking. It's not beautiful. There's nothing classy about my walk. And there are times where I can't walk, but it's a different place than I thought it would be 20 years ago.
So, Sean, do you ever see somebody walking and be like, oh, that guy's got a classy walk? Is that like a term that describes how somebody walks?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. But nope, I can't say that I've ever described somebody's walk as being classy or lacking class.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Sean, can you think of an example of how your perception has changed of yourself and your disability since you were first diagnosed? You were saying 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think one thing for me is 17 years ago when I was diagnosed, I don't know that I expected to still be independent at the level I am. So originally the perception may have been, oh shoot, in 10 years, I'm going to need a wheelchair van and I'm going to be in a wheelchair full time and, I'm going to need help around the house. Fast forward 17 years and I use the wheelchair from time to time, but I'm still fairly independent. So, but the perception of, oh, this is going to unfold quickly and have an impact on every area of life is different today because, sure, FA is a big part of it, but I wouldn't say FA controls or defines what I do or how I do it. It impacts it. Sure, I can't run up the mountain, but that doesn't mean I can't climb the mountain, or ride the bike or whatever it may be. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the perception shift for me is realizing that I can still do some pretty cool stuff, even though I walk funny, or even though I can't run or I can't dance or I can't do this, the other. I can still do some pretty cool stuff and still enjoy life.
Yeah. So you talk about the timing and how your perception might have been a little different than the reality. 10 years from now, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. Well, that's not exactly what happened.
Sure.
And for me, I think of when I first started riding a trike, my perception was I better ride all the miles I can right now because there will be a time, and I didn't know when that was going to be. It could have been a year from then, whatever. So my question to you is, do you think that having FA has forced a little more urgency into the things you want to get done with your life?
No doubt. Absolutely. We all have heard it. Everybody is going to die, right? There's some things in life that are absolutely certain, and death is one of them. For me, I think, okay, there's another checkbox to why you might die or how you might die more than, say, the average Joe. So I don't know that my odds of living a shortened life are decrease over somebody else. They probably are, but I still get to do some pretty awesome stuff today. So I do feel like I get a little more aggressive and hyper focused on important goals because I know that I may not have 40 years to figure it out, or I may not have another 20 years. The fact that I'm 43 is still upright is impressive to me, but I don't want to take that for granted. I don't want to assume I'm still going to be in this position when I'm 63.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I agree with not assuming that you're going to be okay and that FA will not progress. I also, I don't think I'm as scared as I was back then. I have come to hopefully, like, this is a thought, and I hope I can hold on to it and live up to it. But I feel like FA has instilled confidence that no matter what happens, I'm going to be able to deal with it. And that makes me a little nervous because there's a lot of terrible things that could happen, right? And at some level, I'm not sure about that, obviously, but I think it's a wonderful thing that FA has brought to my psyche and my thoughts is that no matter what happens to me, like I hope I'm going to be able to find a way to make the best of it.
Yeah, I guess the only word I might not use in that sentiment for me is I don't think I'm nervous. I don't want to deal with crazy stuff, but on the same token, I am very confident that no matter what is thrown my way, I'll adapt.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's what you're saying too. So
you're right, yeah.
What makes you nervous? What are you nervous about?
Well, I guess I'm just nervous because, like, I mean, partly there's a lot other than FA that can happen in life.
For sure.
I mean, we could, you go out and we can get hit by a bus, right? Or get in a bad car accident
or 8 more combinations of diagnoses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or anything. I mean, the list is endless about things that could go wrong in life, right? And so in saying that, I think I can make the best of whatever happens. Like, if the list is infinity, then I'm not exactly certain about that, but I hope.
All right, fair.
We talked about a little bit how our perception has changed. I want to think about why. Like, for example, one thing that I think about that has helped change the reason my perception has changed is meeting other people in the FA community or in the disability community and realizing that these people are funny and successful and all the things that I want, and realizing that I can also have that even though I have a disability. I think that's been a big X factor for me, and it's something we talk about all the time, just getting connected to other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say meeting other people, seeing other people still thrive in their own way has been one good reason. But I think for me, one of the things that has been helpful is being exposed to or experiencing things that I once dreaded, such as, being confined to a wheelchair. And again, I realize that I'm privileged in the respect that I don't have to use a wheelchair full time. But there have been periods in my life where I've had to, for 3 months, 5 months, whatever it may be. And even in those seasons, although I know my life is different than others, I've realized, or at least I feel like I've realized, okay, this isn't the worst case scenario, being in a chair,
Right.
or, not being able to stand up and be at the kitchen sink or whatever it may be. So I think that's been a big shift, is seeing other people thrive and do their thing, but also having some experience and exposure to what I once dreaded and realizing it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, you come up against difficult situations like using a wheelchair for a few months, transitioning to a wheelchair. And then you come out on the other side, or you're maybe you don't even come out on the other side, but you realize you're able to be in that situation and still, be the person you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big thing. I think for me, it sounds like for you as well, is just knowing that I can get through these things.
Yeah.
Because I have.
Sure. I know that you can still be the person you want to be, right? Maybe that does change a little bit. But at the very least, I'm with you on the idea that you can still make the most out of it. You can still find a reason to laugh or to experience joy or to find a different way of thriving or adapting, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
Because, on the very surface level, when you say you can still be the person you want to be, I mean, if I wanted to be an all-star soccer player, I still can't be that person, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not saying you're wrong, or I'm just pushing back a little bit, because I do think there's going to be a lot of areas of life that do have to shift because we can't be the person we thought we once wanted to be or could be. Like, I can't break dance. I wish I could, but I can't.
Yeah.
A, because I have FA. B, because I'm a white dude. Like, for whatever it's worth.
So this gets to a conversation that I feel like we've touched on before, is like, do your expectations for yourself lower because of FA? Over time, there are, like you said, there's certain things, like, you can dream as much as you want, but there are certain things that are off the table, period.
Sure. Yep.
So, I mean, I think for me, the expectations have changed, but they haven't lowered.
Can you give me an example of a changed expectation?
For example, one of my expectations, I've always been in sports and I've always done endurance. I was a swimmer when I was smaller, and so I don't swim, I don't play basketball, I don't, do a lot of other things like we were talking about before. I can't run, but I can ride my trike. And so in the sporting sort of area, I think I've been able to maybe even increase my expectations, even though I had to change the mode of achieving those expectations.
Sure. I ask because on the surface, I totally agree. Nothing about my life have I intentionally lowered my expectation, right? I'm not going to let myself off the hook just because I walk funny or I have FA. But I wonder if in the process of adapting, you've ultimately lowered the expectation in certain areas. I'm not saying you have. I kind of wonder.
No,
in a sense, like, one thing that comes to mind is work, right? With my day job, there are 5 of us that do what I do. And when we train a new set of new hires, and we spend 8 hours of what we call the orientation day, we send recap emails on everybody to the folks that hired them. We just give them our impression, like, hey, they were great. Hey, they struggled here, or whatever. And then we do some paperwork, and then we clean out their room, and so on. Well, for me to do that with 10 new hires, it ends up being like a 10 or 11 hour day for me. But for all the other trainers, they can do all the same stuff and get it done in 10 hours or 9.5. They're inevitably, they're at least an hour faster than me at the end of the day. So I wonder, have I lowered my expectations because I can't write as fast, I can't move around the room as quickly to clean up, etc.? Or have I just accepted the fact that I can't move as fast? And maybe that's a terrible example, but...
No, I understand, though, because your expectations need to change, even though they may not have lowered.
So in that vein of thought, I'm thinking, okay, I'm still going to do the work. I'm not going to cut corners. It just might take me longer. Okay, I'm with you on that one. To me, I wouldn't call that a lower standard. It still have the high standard or the high expectation of getting the job done, getting it done well. It's just going to take me longer.
Yeah.
So all that to say, you were right from the beginning. on however you worded it, I think that's sufficient.
What I love to hear you say, man. Right now I'm thinking of keeping my house clean. And
we all know you can't do that.
I mean, my expectations of myself 10 years ago were not extraordinarily high. I will admit that.
Yeah.
But are there corners I cut because I can't reach the top shelf to put this stuff away, or like it'll take me 3 times as long, so I'm just not going to do that. I'll wait till somebody comes over and I'll leave it like that for a while. So are there things like that? And I mean, maybe we can, maybe we're allowed to judge it any way we want, whether we think that's a lowered expectation or just part of having a disability. I don't know.
Yeah, or an adjustment, because when you put it that way, I started thinking about some of the stuff I do recently in my bedroom. If it's been a long day or I'm really tired, I don't always put everything away. I'll throw it in the corner and deal with it later when I'm caught up on the rest or on my day off. And although I don't love that throughout the week because I just don't like clutter, I'm more and more okay with it because it saves me time in other areas. I don't let it pile. Like, the first thing I did this morning was put clothes away that have been piled up for the last 3 days. So I still had the expectation of keeping my space neat and orderly. Just may not be 24/7 like maybe it was last year or last month.
Yeah. All right, Sean, as we get to the end of our time, just to recap, I was thinking about how my perception of my disability has changed over time. And I was also thinking about why that perception has changed. And I love that our conversation drifted into expectations of yourself, whether they lower or remain the same. And I hope this is a conversation that a lot of people with disability, and especially a progressive disability, can relate to.
Sure. There's always opportunity to think about how you perceive life, right? Just reflect on where you've been, where you've come, and where you might be able to go. So I value that.
Sweet. Well, in that vein, every episode we do thank you notes to express our gratitude and, force ourselves to think about the things that we're grateful for and voice those things. So I want to move on to thank you notes. Sean, do you have a thank you note today?
I do. And I think some of our listeners are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Some won't. But I'm going to say thank you to Friedrich's Ataxia News and Bio News. A few weeks ago, you and I were both privileged to be a part of their, I don't want to call it an annual event. It's the second one, but they're looking to do these every year where it's a live virtual panel discussion on areas of life that are important and impactful to FA patients and families. Well, this last particular panel, I had the opportunity to host it. You were on as one of the panelists, and I just enjoy being a part of that, and I love the work that FA News and Bio News are doing, and their efforts to bring all walks of life together in the rare disease community. So I'm saying thank you to them for that opportunity.
Yep, I appreciate that too. I'll second that, because it doesn't just happen. Like, it's very intentional. There's a lot of planning and a lot of thought that goes into it. And so I really appreciate, that aspect of it, that it's not going to just happen. There's got to be an effort behind it.
Yep. And I will add, listeners can review that panel discussion, and we'll link that in our show notes. So if you miss it and you're interested, it'll be linked in our show notes. Kyle, your turn. Who are you saying thank you to today?
This may or may not be a repeat, but I want to thank Zwift. Zwift. It's a program that I use on my stationary trainer. So I have a smart trainer on my trike in my bedroom, and it Bluetooths to my computer, and then I have this program that I pay monthly for called Zwift, and I ride in a virtual world on my computer screen, and it keeps track of all my metrics and my power and my speed and my heart rate and all that stuff. And I've been using it, and I think this is actually another way that I've not lowered my expectations, but I've changed the way I do things.
For sure.
Because it's really good for reduced mobility, and I can sit down in my trainer, get a really good workout, and then get right in my shower. And I feel like it's a great adaptation. Like, I still love riding outside, but it's been really good for me.
Yeah, and saving time is such a big factor of every walk of life, right? Whether you're disabled or you're in business or just running a family and a home life, like, everybody wants to maximize and save time. So I'm with you on that. It's not necessarily a lower standard, but a different way of still getting the job done and benefiting in multiple areas. So nice.
Yep. So thank you, Zwift.
And of course, thank you for listening today. As always, we know that this show wouldn't matter, and we wouldn't keep doing it if people weren't downloading. So thank you so much for doing that. If you're enjoying this show, we would love for you to share it with your friends and family. You can do so online or send them an email or whatever you want. Also, while you're sharing, please review it. Those reviews go a long ways for helping our podcast continue to grow. We hope you enjoyed the holiday season. We look forward to talking with you again in season 13. Until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.